بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, my dear respected and viewers, brothers and sisters, we begin inshallah in our lesson tonight by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity for us to continue in our second lesson in the Aqaid of Al-Imam Al-Nasafi. And inshallah in our lesson today we'll begin by the explanation of the Mabadi Asharah of Ilm al-Kalam, that is in the 10 principles of the knowledge of Al-Kalam, so that we have a better understanding on the subject and some of the expectations. But of course, last time when we started in the Kharida Bahiyya, likewise Aqidah Sanusiya, and always we begin by the Mabadi Asharah, and for those who have covered Mabadi Asharah, just regard this as a revision inshallah ta'ala. So if we have time inshallah today, we will enter into the Muqaddimah of Al-Imam Taftazani on the commentary of Aqaid Nasafiyya. As what I mentioned in the previous class, that we will begin the class by us going through the commentary of Al-Imam Taftazani to look at some of the things that he mentioned in the Muqaddimah before we enter into the text of Aqaid Nasafiyya. And the reason is, as what I mentioned last time, is that there are certain important things that he mentioned in the Muqaddimah which inshallah ta'ala I wish to highlight. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us and tawfiq. So inshallah now what I did was I did some slides, so we will just go through the Mabadi Asharah. What is Mabadi Asharah? We call it the 10 principles. So in every knowledge, our ulama mentioned, this is written by Al-Imam Al-Sabban. He mentioned that in every knowledge, as an introduction, we have to understand the 10 things. So for the knowledge of Aqidah, knowledge of Al-Kalam, last week I mentioned I believe I mentioned definition. So the definition is at the bottom. It is knowledge that enables you to establish the principles of creed, derived from evidences of yaqeen. So there are two things. Number one, in the knowledge of Al-Kalam, we are learning the principles of Aqidah, the principles of our belief in Islam. So this is the first part of the knowledge of Al-Kalam. And the second part is to understand the evidences. And evidences, they are divided into two parts. We have Dalil Aqli and Dalil Naqli. We have rational evidences and we have textual evidences. This is what we studied in Aqidah Sanusiya, the commentary of Aqidah Sanusiya in our last kitab. If you can remember that Al-Imam Sanusi, he divided his book into two parts. Number one is the established the principles of faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messengers and Yawm al-Qiyamah and the unseen. And then we have the Barahin, the proofs for all of the principles that are mentioned. The third thing about Ilm al-Kalam is that it is also part of knowledge where it comes out for argument against those who opposes any of the beliefs of Islam. So the knowledge of Al-Kalam is a tool that are used by our ulama to defend the creed of Islam from being interpreted into misguidance, or when people have wrong interpretations of the belief of Islam. Then the knowledge part of knowledge of Kalam is to rebut any false beliefs. So this is basically the definition. I will not go too much in speaking about it. Last week we mentioned a few things. Going too deep into the Muqaddimah will cause boredom to a lot of people. Now this is the explanation on yaqeen, because the difference between knowledge of Al-Kalam and the knowledge of fiqh is that knowledge of fiqh is based on the, evidences that are zanniya, whereas knowledge of Aqidah, they are based on evidences any based on yaqiniyah. This is any difference any between ilm kalam any and al-fiqh. So I gave an example here with the meaning any of evidence any based on yaqeen, and is the word, for example, qul huwallahu ahad. Qul huwallahu ahad, and this is any verse any in the Quran. This is based any on qat'iyya, yani qat'iyya to dalala. It is based any on what you call it, a signification any that is absolute and necessary, that cannot have any interpretations any of differences. So it is based any on dalil yaqini, both any textual we have in the Quran, the qat'iyya to dalala, and likewise any we have the rational any argument, which is wajib any aqli, all this any we studied any in aqidah sanusiyah. And then the mawdu, any the content any of this knowledge, there are four. Number one, any is the attributes any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sifat. And then we have the attributes any of the prophets and messengers, and then sam'iyat or ghaibiyat, the unseen any matters. And then lastly any we have any kawniyat, and it's based any on like today any people are saying any laws of causation, the laws any of causation, any cause and effect. So this is part any of the chapter any of kawniyat. So these are the four main topics any when we learn aqidah or ilmul kalam. And then any the fourth any what is the benefit any of learning any this knowledge. It is ma'rifatullah, knowledge any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the saying any goes, asasuddin ma'rifatullah, yani the basis any of our religion is to understand our maker, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the knowledge any of aqidah, the knowledge any of al-kalam, yani it teaches us about our creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this any will bring any a person to success any in this life and hereafter, because we will not be able any to understand any our purpose any in life. We will not any be able any to perform our worship unless any we understand who is any our creator and what are the attributes any of our creator, yani with correct belief and faith. Then only our ibadah will be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So everything any goes back any to our belief, it goes back any to our understanding any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because any that is any the basis any of everything that every Muslim any must understand and get it correct in order for him any to attain the pleasure any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and rewards. So I gave any this example any of a house any with foundation. So knowledge any of aqidah any Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are not considered to be mukallaf. So one any of the conditions any of taklif is that bulurud da'wah, that the da'wah of Islam any reaches any a person. Just like nowadays also any we mentioned that if there are people any in certain countries or in certain communities which does not know anything any about Islam, which is almost any impossible any today, but if there is or Islam, they heard about Islam, but they heard about Islam any in a manner where it is wrong any, they get any information that is false. Our scholars any mentioned they are considered also any to be people who are non any mukallaf, any they are forgiven any by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unless any the da'wah of Islam any reach them and they have seen the truth any of Islam, and they have understood the tenets any of the faith any in Islam and what the Muslims any believe and so on. Now these people any are mukallaf, and as far as the non-Muslims any in our country, all of them are mukallaf. Likewise any in majority any Muslim any countries any non-Muslims any who are living any with Muslims, any these are people any who are mukallaf, yani the da'wah of Islam any has reached them any by the presence any of Muslims. So these are so many of the things any when we speak any about the obligation any of learning, or the responsibility any of having faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because any people any will be accountable any yawm al-qiyamah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for their belief. And then any the virtue, it is the most any virtuous any knowledge, the knowledge any of ilmul kalam or aqidah. It is the most any virtuous any knowledge, because it has relation any with the attributes any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So anything any that has relation any with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it becomes any virtuous. So since any this knowledge relates any to explaining about the attributes any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is considered any to be the virtuous any knowledge, and it is considered any to be the first any obligation. That's what we mentioned, the first any obligation that is wajib upon a Muslim is to learn this knowledge. And then before that, and we have the nisbah, the significance of this knowledge in comparison with other knowledges. So it is a foundation, whereas other knowledges is considered to be the branch. It is considered to be the foundation of Islam. That's what we mentioned also earlier. So the knowledge of fiqh is a branch of the knowledge of aqidah. Likewise, knowledge of tasawwuf, it is a branch of the knowledge of aqidah. So faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and understanding attributes of Allah, this is the main foundation of this deen. So that is why it is important to study this knowledge well, and at the same time also to implement to attain perfection of iman, to have a strong conviction based on the knowledge that has been learned. So this is how we can strengthen our iman and our Islam. It is by strengthening our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then inshallah everything else will be easy. Like what our scholars mentioned, the reason why we find heavy to perform the obligations, it is because our iman is weak. Our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is weak. So when faith is weak, everything else will be affected. Our prayers will be affected, our fasting will be affected, our actions will be affected. Everything is affected by the level of iman. And human beings other than prophets and messengers, our iman goes up and goes down. When you perform ibadah, when you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you reflect upon the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you remember Allah and you supplicate to Him with sincerity, the iman will increase. But the moment we commit sin and ma'siyah, iman will decrease. So the iman of a person is different from another person. It is not any of the same level. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the strength of and the iman of a particular person. So today in our age, and especially, it is important for us to find ways on how we can strengthen our iman. Nowadays people talk a lot about how to strengthen the body, how to beautify the face, how to have a solid physical body, how to refrain from eating things that can cause diseases, and how to eat well, and all these things, which is important. We are not saying it is not important, but the reality is not many people are concerned about how are we able to strengthen our iman. How are we able to strengthen our iman? The emphasis of strengthening the physical body is given far much importance than the strengthening of our faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas faith in Allah, it is something that will give us, all of us, benefit not only in this life, but even after death. Whereas our physical bodies will perish once the soul goes out from it by the coming of death. May Allah bless us with tawfiq and hidayah. So this is we have two things here. Number one, it is the virtue of this knowledge. Number two, is the significance in comparison with other knowledges in Islam. And the compiler, last week also I mentioned, they are